let's get to the freaking news. We're talking about Lebanon again because yesterday, as you guys know, Israel decided to explode a bunch of pagers in Lebanon. The pagers that exploded beeped first. They were a Taiwanese company, a shipment of Taiwanese company pagers were intercepted by the Israeli intelligence agency. They placed explosives inside of these pagers, and then those pagers were distributed. Now, the problem here is that you have no guarantee that those pagers are exclusively going to end up in the hands of Hezbollah generals. Okay, that's number one. Number two, even if they did end up in the hands of like militants, okay, as long as they are not in active combat zones, you can't explode their communications devices in civilian territory. That is just terrorism. Like what that is directly terrorism. And sometimes, okay, you have liberatory struggles where people do engage in similar acts of terrorism. The IRA comes to mind. But when you are a state, a whole ass state that also has nuclear capabilities doing an act of terror, the situation changes dramatically. What's even wilder, however, is that when Israel did this, everyone in the American government and in the American media basically celebrated this as this like epic James Bond style move. And I looked at it and I was like, dog, this is James Bond, except it would be the villain. It would be the villain in a James Bond movie that does such a thing. James Bond is not killing a 9-year-old, okay? Good guys in movies don't fucking kill 9-year-olds, okay? Or 10-year-olds. That's not a thing that good guys do. That's a thing that bad guys do. But when Israel is a bad guy in the story, people go, nah, it's actually good. And of course, now it's happening again. I just want people to understand something, okay? What Israel did is directly against international human rights. Whatever Israel did is directly a war crime. What Israel did on top of that is also directly an act of terror, okay? It is terrorism. It is the basic dictionary definition of terrorism.
News out of Lebanon yet again. For the second straight day, communication devices are exploding, and this time it appears to be walkie-talkies.
They blew up a funeral,
At least 9
dude.
people are dead. Hundreds have been wounded, and that's according to the Lebanese health ministry. That blast that you just heard in Beirut set off panic in the streets, as you can see here. That was amid a crowd attending a funeral for Hezbollah fighters. Early reports indicate the explosions took place in southern Lebanon and in the southern suburbs of Beirut.
And it comes one day after hundreds of pagers belonging to Hezbollah members exploded nearly simultaneously across Lebanon. The country's
Like, look at that. Look at that. Like, how is that not terrorism, dude? Like, look at that. Dudes at the cash register, man. Like, what are you talking about? Walkie-talkies are used by EMTs driving ambulances. Yeah. Bomb found in ambulance in Beirut. Army detonates it safely. What we're hearing is an explosive device was found by the Lebanese army in an ambulance at the American University Hospital. About 10 minutes ago, army engineers dug a hole in the ground, put the explosive device inside, then detonated it safely. We were about 50 meters away, and the sound of the blast was very loud. The question is, how did the device get into an ambulance? It's not just Hezbollah using walkie-talkies. The medical services use them on a regular basis. Doctors have been telling us that they carry pagers like the ones that exploded yesterday, and they've dumped those now. People here are now suspicious of their devices. That's where we're at now. An underlying fear. Explosions this time have also caused fires around the country. People are not only callous in their defense of this, they're celebrating it. Like, they're openly celebrating it. We watched yesterday a Middle Eastern Institute guy openly go on television and say this is a wonderful attack. I mean, that's what he said. He said this was wonderful. They exploded like a 9-year-old girl, man. Wonderful? Like, it just does not matter, you know? They are not human. They're subhuman. They deserve to die. They shouldn't have been born there. Sucks to suck. And here, the Middle Eastern Institute statement. Remember when I told you it was fucking verbatim what was coming out of Israel? Remember yesterday when I told you that Middle Eastern Institute guy that was a Lebanese dude himself who was like, this was a wonderful attack and the goal is to decouple Hezbollah from Hamas? One day later, here you have it. Barak Ravid probably directly reporting what Benjamin Netanyahu is saying, because when he says one source told me, in the Israeli government, he means Benjamin Netanyahu usually. The goal was to convince Hezbollah that it is in the interest to disconnect itself from Hamas and cut a separate deal for ending the fighting with Israel regardless of a ceasefire in Gaza. Second day of communication devices exploding across Lebanon. At least a dozen people were killed and hundreds injured as a result of communication devices exploding across Lebanon. Now, the terrorism aspect of this conversation also is that, like, this creates mass chaos amongst the civilian population in Lebanon where people don't know if they can use their phones or not. That's terrorism. That is the specific goal of terrorism, making you think that the thing that you rely on every day could explode in front of you, directly near your ear or around your children. That is the goal of terrorism, okay? It is to invoke terror. It is to cause irreparable psychological harm amongst a civilian population. There are Lebanese people in this chat that are probably experiencing it and going through it right now. There are people whose family members live in Lebanon that are going through this right now. We stored our phones away. We're not allowed to bring them on campus. It's genuinely terrifying. The entire 98th Division of the Israeli Army is currently being staged and mobilized at the Lebanese border. It is completely unacceptable. It's completely ridiculous. And the fact that it's being celebrated in the Western world is like expected, but it still doesn't change the reality that it's just gross, you know? Lebanon civil defense teams extinguished dozens of fires. Organization says the teams have put out at least 60 fires across the country's southern governorate of Nabatea. Fires broke out in residential homes and local businesses as well as in vehicles and motorbikes as a result of the explosion of wireless devices. Firefighting and rescue operations are still ongoing. Israel, it seems, is gearing up to invade Lebanon again. Amid heightened tensions with Hezbollah, IDF deploys 98th Division to northern Israel. The paratroopers and commando division will now join the 36th Division under the Northern Command. The 98th Division, with approximately 10,000, 20,000 troops, was withdrawn from southern Gaza's Khan Yunis in late August. The move comes amid fears of a wider conflict in Lebanon. It's like, it always is like fears of a wider conflict in Lebanon, but you're like, fearful that what? Like you're going to go invade Lebanon? That's the fear, by the way. The fear is that they're going to have to invade Lebanon, which is something that they've wanted to do and something that they have done in the past, mind you. It's not like this is, you know, something that they haven't done already. It's crazy. Oh man, we're so fearful that we're just going to have to invade Lebanon again. I hate that. I hate that we have to do that. And the unfortunate reality is in the Western world, when you slap the Hezbollah sticker on something because they're Muslim, it's over. You know what I mean? It's like no one ever looks at this and goes, wait a minute, this is like bombs exploding in the middle of a crowded room. Like, how is this acceptable in any capacity? They're like, nah, Hezbollah, they're terrorists. They're around terrorists. They deserve it. Sorry. Isn't an attack on the logistics and command side of Hezbollah a preparation for the invasion of Lebanon? Isn't that the first step an invader makes? No, you would do that in the midst of an invasion if you were making it. If you were doing this as a tactical decision, it would still be completely unacceptable. It would still be a war crime. It would still be an act of terror. But at least there would be some logical reason behind it because you're already about to explode their neighborhoods regardless. The reason why they did this before invading Lebanon by giving the game away that they had this capability is because I suspect they were close to figuring it out. They were worried that Hezbollah was going to figure out this plan that they had.
His health minister says at least 12 people, including children, were killed on Tuesday and nearly 3,000 others injured. CNN has learned those coordinated explosions were part of a joint operation between Israel's military and intelligence service.
Oh, I was going to say this yesterday. I heard an interview on NPR today in which an Israeli spokesman was saying they're tracking everyone injured and going to the hospital because they're all Hezbollah, Lamau. Yeah, that's the other thing I was going to say. The real psychopathic shit to do in this circumstance is to see who had to go to a hospital so that you can once again coordinate additional strikes afterwards, maybe while they're in the hospital, as a matter of fact. Why would they not blow up hospitals in Lebanon? Have they ever faced repercussions from the international community or the top dog in this process, the United States of America, for blowing up a hospital in Gaza, an area that they are a belligerent occupier over? What will stop them from reapplying the Dahiya doctrine, which they invented in Lebanon to begin with, once again in Lebanon? They've done it to Lebanon before, and they will do it again. Yeah. I gave an excellent example yesterday that I used. If you reverse the roles and Hamas or Hezbollah intercepted production of cell phones in Israel and blew up commanders, politicians, and civilians, it would be considered the largest terror attack ever. Exactly. They would say it's October 7 all over again. It's 9/11 all over again. It's the Holocaust all over again. And now we must do Holocaust 2 and 3 and 4 upon every seemingly Arab person, not Jewish descent, of course, seemingly every Arab person of Muslim or Christian background in this immediate vicinity, Sorry, sucks to suck. The obvious double standard in this situation is so glaring that it's like it doesn't even bear covering it, you know? Like look at this. Dude, look at the insane God. My fellow citizens are animals, okay? Every single one of them, every single person, animals, all of them. Look, today's cover, thousands of Hezbollah fighters injured in Lebanon when the new pages all simultaneously explode. Beep, beep, boom. 2,800 Hezbollah terrorists hit by exploding pager plot. Literally a 9-year-old girl was one of the 11 people killed in the first day. I can't wait to watch this movie when it becomes a spy movie. This is the craziest counterterrorism plot I've ever heard of. And then the CEO of Twitter is like putting a bomb emoji. This is like, these people are so gross, and they just don't even recognize the inhumanity, okay? They don't recognize it. They are psychopaths. They're animals, and they're all around us, okay? They're around us. It's totally normal. It's just, if this is happening to Arabs, it's fine. It's great. We need more of it. It's a sick counterterrorism plot. We are so firmly in the post 9/11 pocket right now, dude. Straight up. Can you explain the relationship between Hezbollah and the Lebanese government? Are they the government? They're a part of the Lebanese government. Yes. I believe they have 18 seats in the parliament. The Lebanese government is a multi-party. The Lebanese government has a multi-party parliament. Hezbollah is not our government. Okay. It's not the government, but it absolutely has, as you also correctly pointed to and corrected me on, not 18, but 15 seats. I think 3 additional seats that are like, no, it's not like they're Green Party. There is no American equivalent because America has a duopoly. Yeah, I think it's 18 because of the independents that are aligned with Hezbollah, and they're part of the governing coalition. Their influence in parliament is not nearly as important as the power in majority Shia parts of the country. I know, but that's not the point that I'm making. The reason why I'm mentioning parliament is because America doesn't have a parliamentary structure anyway, so I'm trying to Americanize the conversation. People in the United States of America are primed and conditioned into going, Hezbollah, that's terrorism. They're big, scary Muslim guys with guns that want to put a bomb in a bus or some shit. The reason why I'm describing it with the terms I'm describing it as is so that Americans who are uninitiated, so many people in this chat until yesterday and probably today did not know that there is a parliamentary structure in Lebanon, and Hezbollah has a civil affairs division, a active party, and has members in the parliament. Most people did not know this, most likely. And that is not even the fault of academia or our institutions that teach people. I think that's directly a consequence of, look at the coverage here. It's directly a consequence of mainstream media refusing to cover these sorts of issues with a grain of truth, because I guess there is a little bit of fear that if you were to look at it and be like, wait a minute, Israel blew up members of a foreign nation's parliament? That doesn't make sense. That seems a little weird to me. Just like if they were to reckon with the reality that Israel also blew up the daughter of a member of parliament, that would come across as odd because they want to celebrate it. It's much easier to just simply leave it at they're terrorists.
Welcome back. There's been a fresh wave of blasts in Lebanon, with Israel tonight declaring a new phase in the war in the Middle East. This time, the source of the explosions appears to be walkie talkies. 9 people are reported to have died and dozens.
By the way, the retaliation for this, and once again, I always, as I like to repeat time and time again, the occupier or the colonial entity always sets the terms for violence. What Israel has done, once again, in Lebanon, invites retaliation from Hezbollah and any other Lebanese forces that want to participate in this to respond in kind. What that means is a similar act of terror, which will be considered terrorism, by the way, if there is any sort of retaliation. It will be considered terrorism when Hezbollah retaliates. If Hezbollah retaliates, then you'll know how these things are covered. If they are covered in a way, it still won't be covered truthfully, because they'll say, this is so unprovoked. I can't believe they did such a thing. But basically, you are opening up the floodgates to civilians being targeted. Once again, Israel, not safe for anybody, and definitely not safe for Jews either, because of the actions of the Israeli government. Is it callous to say that if this happened in Ukraine, the media will call for nuking Russia as a whole, but since it's about us Arabs is not okay, but encouraged? Yes, it's not callous to say that. It's correct to say that, because when Russia does like booby trap civilian infrastructure, it is immediately declared completely gross thing to do, and a direct violation of human rights. They have done it. Not to this degree, but they have done it. Also, yesterday I talked about this, but it would be like if Russia didn't just do this to Ukraine, if Russia did this to Poland, okay? If they just like booby-trapped and exploded the phones of Polish members in the government and we're like, yeah, sorry, sucks to suck. Like, you just shouldn't have been against us invading Ukraine. Why is there such a difference in reaction between Russia and Israel? It's a very easy answer. Russia is our enemy. Israel is our ally. That's it. Our allies can do no wrong. Our enemies can do no right. It's that simple. No, it's not just skin color. No. It's not just skin color. That absolutely is a factor. But the largest factor in this circumstance is that Israel is our ally. There's a strategic interest in defending Israel in the eyes of the American government, even if there really isn't at this point.
We know how important it is at this time to carry out things in close cooperation. This happens first of all between all the players within the IDF, together with the other organizations, and also at the level of the most senior commanders. There is full coordination in the system and unity regarding the achievement of the goals. The Prime Minister, the Chief of Staff, the head of Shin Bet, the head of the Mossad, the Minister of Defense, everything they represent, everything in a common way is dedicated to one goal, to bring the residents back. I appreciate...
Yeah. Also, the Israel and the United States are a signatory of this as well. The UN Convention on Booby Traps. Thinking about the rules relating to booby traps under Amended Protocol 2 of the CCW for no particular reason. It is prohibited to use booby traps or other devices in the form of apparently harmless portable objects which are specifically designed and constructed to contain explosive material. Without prejudice to the provisions of Article 3, it is prohibited to use weapons to which this article applies in any city, town, village, or other area containing a similar concentration of civilians in which combat between ground forces is not taking place or does not appear to be imminent unless either they are placed on or in close vicinity of a military objective or measures are taken to protect civilians from their effects, for example, the posting of warning sentries, the issuing of warnings, or the provision of fences. None of those things were happening in this situation. So obviously booby traps are illegal, especially like, you know, packing explosive devices on like things that civilians use are completely illegal for good reason. You also can't kill or attempt to kill people who are not directly in combat. You understand that, right? Like, it would be an act of terror if somehow, I don't know, ISIS figured out who every veteran was in the United States of America and then blew them up by booby trapping their phones. Obviously, ISIS would never do that. It's a part of the American intelligence apparatus, but you know, like doing that to the National Guard, for example, like that's not legal nor allowed. See this from Ofer Kasif. Activating explosive devices in crowded places is an act of terrorism by any accepted definition, and it doesn't matter who is responsible for it, the IDF, Hamas, the CIA, or Mossad. Yep. It's just crazy. Yeah. This little girl was a Hezbollah human shield because a pager filled with explosives exploded in her house. She's a Hezbollah child soldier. Congressman Brad Sherman. In war, it's impossible to fully prevent harm to civilians. Thanks, Congressman Brad Sherman. Seems great. Anyway, here, let's hear what Christian Amanpour had to say. CNN's chief international correspondent, usually with like some more reasonable takes.
There are a lot of people who will be killed and a lot of people injured and a lot of them maimed for good, you know, so it's a very hard situation. And I don't know what's Israel's intention. I don't think they can return their those refugees who went from their villages in the north in this way, because Israel was...
Like, think about it this way. When people are saying, aren't there bombing every day from both sides between southern Lebanon and northern Israel? Great question, right? So that chatter asked that question. Here's the answer. If Hezbollah blew up, again, members of the Knesset in the exact same way, in their homes, killed their children, you would understand it as an act of terrorism. You would. But when Israel does it, it's like, nah, that's actually super sweet that they did that.
Lebanon and had to run away in Lebanon. Of course, they stayed 22 years, but there were too many killings of Israelis there. So I don't think Israel would want to occupy South Lebanon again, because this time the resistance is stronger than it was in the past. So I really don't understand the Israelis, because if they want to go to get back their people to the north, those who were displaced to the north, to their villages and settlements, they have to negotiate. And they have to negotiate with the Lebanese government through mediators like...
4 medical staff, an 8-year-old girl, and an 11-year-old boy are dead.
Like the Americans as well. What happened today is escalation. You know, we cannot talk to Hezbollah anymore now in the way we were talking to them in the past, because they are, of course, they were hit very badly, and therefore retaliation is a must to them. We'll try to do something, but I don't know how much we have power to stop them.
It all sounds
resistance in the south.
It all sounds
the occupation of land.
Foreign Minister, it all sounds really hopeless. On the one hand, you say, you know, the U.S. has to do something. The U.S. didn't even know what was about to happen. Israel is its main ally. Israel takes its weapons from the United States. Nobody knew, according to Secretary of State.
For months and months, I have been telling you that this is Benjamin Netanyahu's October surprise, which is not even a surprise if you're telegraphing this action. And just like I told you, if America does not restrain Israel early on, since early October of last year, it's been one year at this point. Okay, it's been an entire year of Israel's genocide. Early October, I said, if America does not restrain Israel, this will get completely out of control. And they never did. Joe Biden's bear hug strategy is in full display. Joe Biden flew to Israel, bear hugged Benjamin Netanyahu, and said, go off, king. This is it. This is what happens when you keep giving unlimited weapons to Israel and never tell them to stop. Okay, that's why all of the tireless conversations surrounding the ceasefire negotiations process is so stupid. It's just a lie. Okay, even leaving aside the obvious moral issue with blowing up thousands of pagers and walkie-talkies, it shows what fascistic hell pit that we're in, that all Israeli media is jerking off at this successful targeted operation without discussing the obvious strategic idiocy of the move. No one is tricking themselves into thinking this provides deterrence, just swinging our dick around and shouting, look how cool our gadgets are. Exactly. I've heard people say that because Israel is in active conflict with Hezbollah, this retaliation is justified and there are no more ethical approach. What would an acceptable response be to Hezbollah be? A bombing would be unacceptable. An invasion would be unacceptable. Ground operations are untenable. I don't agree that Israel should necessarily respond, but I don't know what the counter to this argument is. You should ask them how they would feel if Hezbollah infiltrated and intercepted the regular civilian communications tools that members of the Knesset and Israeli occupying force soldiers that are at home with their families are using, and exploded them in the middle of a day when they were at their grocery stores, when they were at the supermarket, when they were at home tucking their child in. Because if Hezbollah did that, obviously that would be considered an act of terror. That everyone would call it as such. Okay, that's number one. And number two, what is the retaliation to Hezbollah is a great question. If someone asks you that question, it's the same exact answer to Ansar Allah. These guys are not bombing Israel for no reason. They have very openly stated since October 8 or October 9 why they are doing this. They are doing this because they want Israel to stop blowing up Gaza. Israel has not stopped blowing up Gaza, so the bombs have not stopped. And it's the same with Ansar Allah. The solution to this problem is de-escalation and diplomacy. The solution to this problem is to end the genocide. But that is not even considered. That is not even up for discussion, even though every single person keeps stating that that is the only way out of this, including generals, Israeli generals, former officials and current officials of the Israeli Knesset. Everybody recognizes that there is no military solution to Hamas.